The year was 1917. The Great War was raging across Europe, thousands of miles away from Canada. But the war machine required constant feeding. Everything depended on the supply lines crossing the ocean. Halifax, Nova Scotia, was the final staging point for these vital convoys heading overseas. The port was under immense pressure and constant threat from German U-boats lurking offshore. Safety was paramount, yet speed was even more important. Everything moved quickly through the Narrows. On the morning of December 6th, one specific vessel arrived that should have been handled with extreme caution. The Mont Blanc was not fast, nor was it stealthy, but it carried the most dangerous payload imaginable. Its hull contained thousands of tons of high explosives, materials designed to tear apart armies and infrastructure. This was not a general cargo. This was what the documents called a floating bomb, waiting only for a trigger. The primary component was 2,366 tons of picric acid. Picric acid is extremely volatile, even more so than TNT, and has a significantly lower flash point. The cargo manifest also listed 250 tons of trinitrotoluene, or TNT, known for its destructive power. Additionally, the ship carried 62 tons of gun cotton, a highly flammable and explosive cellulose. But the final, critical piece of the cargo was 494 barrels of the highly flammable liquid benzol. This configuration meant that the ship was essentially a massive wick surrounding an incendiary core. The authorities in Halifax were fully aware of the Mont Blanc's unprecedented danger. It was known that this specific combination of chemicals was a catastrophe waiting to happen. The established protocol for any vessel carrying high explosives was crystal clear. Such a ship was required to anchor far outside the congested harbor, away from all civilian traffic. This system was designed to protect the 60,000 residents of Halifax from disaster. But the pressure of the war effort was intense. Delays were not tolerated. On the morning of December 6, 1917, the Mont Blanc was already hours behind schedule. The orders were given for the Mont Blanc to proceed immediately into the crowded harbor. The authorities knew the extreme danger of this vessel, yet critical safety protocols designed to keep it separate from civilian traffic were ignored. But its final voyage transformed it entirely. The ship became a mobile, high-pressure chemical weapon. The core of this destructive power lay in an explosive compound called picric acid. The Mont Blanc carried 2,366 tons of picric acid. In terms of volatility, picric acid is far more dangerous than standard munitions. Its flash point is only 572 degrees Fahrenheit. Standard TNT, for comparison, needs over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit to ignite. But the picric acid was just the main course. The ship carried other explosives as well. 250 tons of TNT were loaded below deck, plus 62 tons of gun cotton, a highly volatile nitrocellulose compound. This was already enough material to decimate a city block, but the mixture was not complete. The final ingredient, added almost as an afterthought, changed everything. This was the chemical benzol, a highly flammable solvent. 494 barrels of liquid benzol were stored on the upper deck. The Mont Blanc was no longer a munitions carrier. It was a complex chemical cocktail. Any fire would not need to slowly burn its way into the hold. The Mont Blanc was now a detonation device. The French crew understood the inherent danger of their cargo. They were trying to shield the chemicals from any outside interference or stray spark. But these very protections created a new, unseen hazard. The crew's attempts to protect the dangerous chemical cocktail ultimately led to the very incident they were trying to prevent. The morning of December 6, 1917, dawned clear and cold over Halifax. The port was operating under immense pressure. War traffic demanded constant movement. At the same time, the French munitions ship Mont Blanc was attempting to enter the harbor. It had anchored outside the port overnight due to the security rules. It was inbound toward the designated explosives anchorage. The protocol for large ships entering and leaving the harbor was strict. They were to pass port side to port side. But the IMO was late and had taken the wrong side of the channel. The Mont Blanc was navigating the Narrows, the narrowest point of the harbor. The captains attempted to signal their intentions using whistle blasts. They signaled 3 blasts, meaning the engines were running astern. But the signaling failed to correct their courses. Institutional pressure and impatience had put them in an impossible situation. At 8:45 a.m., the IMO struck the Mont Blanc. The impact was not sudden or violent. It was a scrape, a grating of steel against steel. This friction created heat and sparks. The Mont Blanc's cargo of TNT and picric acid was protected below deck, but the highly flammable benzol was stacked near the impact site. The sparks immediately ignited the benzol. Flames erupted on the deck of the Mont Blanc. The crew knew instantly what this meant. Benzol was only the first layer. Beneath it lay the cargo of 2,366 tons of picric acid and 250 tons of TNT. They understood that the ship was doomed. The French captain, Aimé Lemaitre, ordered the crew to abandon ship. They dropped into lifeboats and rowed rapidly toward the Dartmouth shore. Critically, the crew did not sound a wide general alarm. There was no time, or perhaps they simply panicked. The city of 60,000 people had no warning. The Mont Blanc drifted, engulfed in fire. It floated toward Pier 6, still burning fiercely. The fire burned for 20 minutes. Citizens were drawn to their windows to watch the spectacle. They stood there, unaware of the chemical forces gathering on the water. They watched the fire, sealing the fate of thousands. At 9:04 a.m., the chemical recipe reached its terrible conclusion. The Mont Blanc disintegrated in a blinding white flash of light. The resulting blast was the largest man-made explosion prior to the nuclear age. It was estimated at 3 kilotons of TNT equivalent power. This meant the Halifax explosion was roughly 1/5 the power of the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. The scale was unprecedented. The shockwave traveled faster than sound itself. It instantly leveled nearly 2 square miles of the city. The steel remains of the Mont Blanc's anchor were later found 2 miles away. It had been launched into the air like a simple stone. The pressure was so powerful it snapped large wooden trees in half. Entire city blocks were instantly turned into rubble. But the greatest human catastrophe was not the immediate collapse of buildings. It was the collective moment just before the explosion. Thousands of residents had gathered at their windows to watch the fire. They saw the column of black smoke rising from the harbor. When the shockwave hit, the flying glass became shrapnel. The most common and tragic injury suffered that day was instant, traumatic blindness. Many thousands of people were blinded by the glass. The city faced a medical crisis it could not handle alone. The immediate aftermath left nearly 2,000 people dead. Thousands more were critically injured or permanently disabled. The sound of the blast was heard over 200 miles away. The silence left behind in the city was devastating. The investigation revealed that this was not simply a navigation error or a tragic miscalculation. The devastating failure was a systemic breakdown of established safety protocols. These protocols were designed to manage extreme volatility. They were ignored under the pressure of wartime efficiency. The Halifax explosion was worse than we think because it demonstrated a new reality. It showed the power of a modern chemical weapon detonating in a civilian space. This happened long before the nuclear age even began. Yet, the tragedy also forged a powerful, positive legacy. The immediate, massive aid response arrived from Massachusetts. It was a defining moment of global community. It proved that cooperation could be forged in the face of absolute disaster. We know the physics of the blast and the cargo's volatility. What remains unknown is the full cost of rushing safety for wartime gain. The Halifax explosion still matters today as a lesson in risk assessment. It is a reminder of the true price of systemic failure. What event redefined risk assessment for you? Click subscribe to explore more forgotten history. Next time, the secret history of the ghost ship Mary Celeste.